Nurah Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nurah Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Munir Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to a special episode of the Nurah Speaks Podcast, streaming live on Facebook. And I'm so excited to have a brother with me and with you this week to have interesting conversation. And this is a show that I'm very, very excited about. People have their dream guests or their bucket list, or those folks that it would be very meaningful to bring to their platform. And, brother, for me, you are one of those people that I'm so excited to welcome to the program. So welcome to the Nurah Speaks Podcast.
Thank you so much, sister. I am flattered and honored. I'm humble to be your guest. I'm a fan of the podcast. I try to promote it whenever I can. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity.
Oh, I thank you for that, brother. And Assalamu alaikum, which is the greeting of the righteous and the greetings of peace that Muslims give one another. Just as an introduction, let me just share with my audience that you are Jamil Muhammad, the executive producer and host of C.R.O.E Television, C.R.O.E TV Studios, based out of Chicago. And you are the son of brother Munir Muhammad, who was my very second guest on the podcast. He's someone that I value tremendously. And in fact, I owe a debt of gratitude to him and to my local minister, brother minister Wasim Muhammad, because it was those two brothers that really pushed me and encouraged me to start this podcast. And so here I am, 3+ years later. And it's very exciting to have a platform to share what it is that, I've been blessed to know and learn, and the folks who come into my path that I believe have, something valuable to share. And, just to share a little bit about C.R.O.E. C.R.O.E was established in 1987 with the intention to preserve the life, the legacy, the words, and the accomplishments of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with our people at a time when he was essentially being written out of history. A man who is and was so great to raise those whom we love, his students, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and so many others, plus the influence that he had on Black culture. And so many of us love the effect that he had on the community, but very little know him and what he's done. And C.R.O.E was established with the premise to use only his words so that the people can get the truth unfiltered, unbiased, unedited, even if the truth offends some. So I'm just eager and proud to have you here. You're a member of C.R.O.E. You're the executive producer and host of C.R.O.E Television. So I think I stole your introduction. Usually I ask my guests to introduce themselves.
No, sister, I'm honored. It feels good to be on this side of the microphone too. Just to hear that. And I'd like to add that, the original idea was to erect a billboard with the messenger's picture, simply with the words, "Do you remember this man?" And out of that desire and pooling the resources, C.R.O.E came into existence.
Yes, sir. It's a wonderful thing. And the fact that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is someone who you and I and the founders of C.R.O.E and the members of C.R.O.E recognize as someone who should be remembered, someone who should be honored. We are in Black History Month, and we hear very little, if anything at all, about him, although we hear much about his students. For him to have students that have impacted the world as significantly as they've done, yet for him, who's the teacher of the students, to be ignored, it's important that we bring him into the conversation, right? We say that we can tell the tree by the fruit that it bears, right? So I think in this case, we really should study the tree.
Absolutely, sister. When you look at even the term Black, I mean, our people were satisfied being called and calling ourselves Negroes. You made it fashionable to be Black, and you spoke of the influence of his students, those who sought counsel with him, Brother Kwame Ture, anyone who wanted to identify with being Black had to look at the example of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And, unfortunately, when you think of the greater masses of our people and what they call Black History Month and things like that, it's usually historically been what others have allowed us or sanctioned is convenient for us to talk about. And that's how we get to this place, where the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad his name does not come up. And we could talk about the many reasons why that is. However, when you talk about anything of good, of greatness, when you deal with Black people, it could be linked back in some capacity to a thought, an idea, a word, or something that derives from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his teaching.
Our history is really incomplete without knowing this part, without being informed of this part. And as you said, brother, that it is convenient for some that this history is omitted because of the impact that he has had on our people. I was sharing with a sister recently that even the what we think is the revolutionary dogma of the Black Panther Party and others, that came from somewhere because we didn't call each other Black. It was an insult to call a Black person Black, right? That meant we wanted to fight. And it was him that made Black be trending and popular and acceptable and something that we could be proud of. And that came from him, although many of us don't know that. And so the fact that that part of our history was omitted, I think that an intelligent person would want to investigate why. Right now I've seen so many Black authors and historians are coming up with new books every year to talk about the Black experience. They want to share the Black experience and the Black history mainstream. They want to make Black history a part of the mainstream education in schools, but that still doesn't have the meaning that it would and should if it excludes that part of our history with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because even his reach impacted the civil rights movement and Dr. King, as we were talking before we went live. Even Dr. King came and sought counsel with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we saw that Dr. King's viewpoint on what he was initially wanting and working so hard for Black people, he realized that he was, as he said, leading his people into a burning building.
Just I think what we have to look at, and when you look at the terms convenience, we know that many times people choose convenience over truth. That's just the way we've seen the evidence of that. And then we have to look at the ultimate goal and objectives. And so for many of our people, the goal, as it was yesterday, as it is today, is to be accepted by Caucasian people, period. It's to be accepted and seen as their equal. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that was not his objective. It was to have freedom, justice, and equality, but ultimately it was separation. It was to pool our own resources and do for self, to teach our own, to identify with our own culture. If we couldn't separate, he wanted to at least establish a nation within a nation. If we couldn't do it completely physically, at least do it mentally. And so when you think of the objectives and what his mission was and is through his teachings, then it's a different objective than those who write those books, than those who are Black elitists or decision makers now. And, so therefore, you can't wear both hats. And when you look at it, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, there's accountability with that. There's responsibility. So therefore, the discipline that's involved, and we know that it's a life-giving teaching, but it requires discipline, and it is a belief. It is a divine solution or a divine problem. And what we've seen is that people understand that the treatment that they've received under Christianity is given to them by the Caucasian has been unjust and unfair. But out of fear of putting down that religion, they try to hold on to that's what's convenient and still walk the track. And we've seen many people take bits and pieces of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But as you know, it's a program that has to be worked completely.
Yeah.
You know, you can't take bits and pieces and expect the ultimate outcome. And so we began to understand this. And when we share this information with our people, you can see the light bulb goes off. I mean, truth resonates with our people. It's just a matter of if they're willing to go all the way. And let me say this, sister, I was raised a Muslim follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I have a tremendous amount of respect for those who believed something else and had to accept the reality that that was untrue, had to put that down and then accept something new. I didn't have to go through that. My journey was to test that which I believe and still just prove that it's true. But I never had to put anything down and pick up something else because I was blessed in that way. And so I understand some of the challenges with that, not wanting to disappoint family and friends and those kinds of things. But the truth and that consciousness, you know, it's just there. And so what we tried to do with C.R.O.E, we didn't say and establish C.R.O.E, hey, you have to be a Muslim. It's a coalition. And so you have people of all kinds of faiths and beliefs. However, what we wanted you to do was simply measure the results, simply give him credit for what he produced. If you look across the spectrum of America today in our communities, we are saying we need our own businesses. We need our own schools. We need our own restaurants. We need our own publications. These are things that were in existence under the leadership of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We had our own import-export treaties with Peru and other nations. We were getting clothes and materials for suits and things that we were doing. And this was a nation within a nation, our own transportation network with trucking. We had our farming, we had schools in just about every major city. You know, all of these things were in existence at a time, sister, but technology wasn't prevalent as it is today.
Right.
At a time when you had the messenger who put a suit and a tie on the devil and said who they were. A time when they were openly, not as clandestine, trying to assassinate, just look at it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not assassinated, was not murdered for his convictions and the way he was teaching. And so all I'm saying is that if you're measuring the results, there is no way that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's name cannot be mentioned when you talk about the Black experience here in America.
Right. And, brother, that what you were describing as having to weigh and measure and put something down, that was my experience. When I was, fresh out of high school, I was invited to attend my first Muslim meeting. I had no previous interaction with Muslims. And it was astonishing that all of the questions that I had my entire life and questions I never thought to ask had been answered. And it was a serious revolution for me, but I still had family and friends who knew me as who I was and the thoughts that I used to think. And so that challenge that people have when they are made to be acquainted with this truth, with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it is interesting because, as you say, the light bulb goes off. And then the second thought after realizing this is the truth is, how am I going to tell my mother? How am I going to tell my father? What are my friends going to say? Because, as you mentioned, it is convenient to stay where we were. But as we are in 2021, we've seen nationwide protests about George Floyd and other social injustices. And we're talking Black economics now. We're talking, about sending our children to medical school and needing our own healthcare clinics. And here we are complaining about the condition of the water systems, like, what happened in Flint. And, from 1930s until 1975, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying, stop being a beggar and seeking integration, respect yourself and do something for self. And so that is one of the things that I strive to hammer into the conversations that I have on the podcast, because it is the freedom that our people need, but they have to accept a new concept of not going to someone else with a handout, but going to someone with a handshake, to do business, to do exchange, goods and services, and looking to do something independently. Folks are now looking for allies to support us in our fight for justice. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad just said, the same wheat that's planted in the earth that you buy from the supermarket, you can plant that wheat yourself. And so just having the ability to be industrious, to have the ability to love ourselves and the pride to do for self, that's what he gave us. And that's, the message that we want to share with our people, because it's a beautiful message that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us.
Yes, ma'am, it is, sister. And, I'll say this because you alluded to the protest and the movement and just the spirit since the murder of George Floyd, Sister Breonna Taylor and others. And if you, for those in your viewing audience, if they know me personally, I was not as excited about the outcomes of that, because I felt that the reason that it garnered so much, there were two reasons, in my opinion, that it garnered so much attention and became a mass movement. One is because, of course, political, it was easy to paint the former President Donald Trump as the singular bad person and the root, just to put it on him. If we get him out, things may be better. The other thing was that, sister, it was during a pandemic. People were, and you saw in these protests, the Antifa and others who had joined and participated in some of these marches and movement, and the excitement of our people with, they're understanding, they're joining our cause with us. And, this is finally what we've been waiting for, and the time is going to change. Let me know then that, no, you all just don't get it. That's not the answer. And, with that, you saw how quickly in the months of July, in late June and July, how corporations automatically, we support Black lives and Black lives do matter, and these messages of equality. When those things were in existence well before then, and they could have put them up. George Floyd wasn't the first. We've had other murders documented on video, on tape. We have. There are other times this could have happened, and we protest these injustices. So this was not driven by us, it was driven by them and their convenience. And that's the reality of it, in my opinion. Does not mean that the spirit of entrepreneurship, of pooling our resources and do it for self, the good can't come out of it. But if your level of engagement or enthusiasm of why this is so special is because Caucasian people were seen in these things and contributing to what they call civil unrest, then you're simply misguided, and you're still looking to them to validate your concern. And that is not the way revolution takes place. For all of our people, and this is what they have to understand, as students of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we understand that this is a divine problem. We look to the books of scripture and see ourselves in it as a book of prophecy. And so when you look in the book of scripture, no, the prophets and messengers were not accepted by the masses of the people. No one who was in power treating the people unjustly just said, okay, I see you as my equal, let's all be friends, or we're going to do this through a political process. No, the civilization had to fall. There was a warner, there's an opportunity, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, to extend your time if you're oppressive, but if you don't adhere to that, he taught us of this 100% dissatisfaction. And you look all over the place, the civil unrest or what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. I heard so many of our people like, oh, what's happening to our democracy? Oh, America, this and that. That was a fight in a battle between Caucasian people.
Right.
That didn't have anything to do with you in reality. And so when we look at the media, it's been portrayed as Donald Trump and only a few people who feel that way about him. But there are a lot of people who feel that way. And so what I'm saying is that no matter where you go, you have to do for self. And that's why, I was honored to have Sister Shabri on. And we talked about the education of our people right now, of our young students. You and I both know that the inequities that existed, that our people were always trying to catch up as far as resources and things.
Right.
And so this remote learning that many of our people have is going to set us back even farther.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we have to teach and pool our resources in order to save our own. This is a battle for our future. And so I don't always want to be what they call, the negative person, but the lens that I look through is like, hey, this is another trick. And so the only solution, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, was for our people to unite. Because if we unite, that power is magnificent and nothing can stop us.
Yes, yes. Sister Shabri, she's a former guest on the podcast, and she's someone actually I like to bring annually to the show to share what she can contribute in the way of education and otherwise. And she makes it so plain in helping our people understand, one, what education is and what it isn't, and two, helping parents be empowered so that they know what to look for. Because when a student, is in front, or excuse me, when a parent is in front of the teacher is the professional. And you know how our people have been historically. When someone is in a position of authority, we nod, we smile, and we think that they're always right. So she's a great asset to Nurah Speaks and to C.R.O.E. and any platform that she joins. And brother, as you were talking about the response that our people had during the aftermath of the Breonna Taylor, the George Floyd, we can go back to Mike Brown in Ferguson, and we can go back to our brother in Baltimore, Freddie Gray. We're so reactionary, right? We are comfortable until we are shown once again the injustice that happens, and then we react. And we say things like we need Black economics, and we say things like, we need, quote, accountability. And if we could help our people understand that togetherness and unity is something that should always be practiced, not just in response to a trauma, not just in response to a tragedy. And it's not revenge. Our unity is not revenge. Our unity is survival. And so I've mentioned on the podcast, I've had a show talking about Donald Trump. He's not our problem. Talking about racism is not the biggest problem that we have, but it's our refusal, really, to look to one another to meet our own needs. And so I'm curious about C.R.O.E. and C.R.O.E. Television and your role as a executive producer, as a television host, in helping our people to get that message that our unity doesn't have to be for revenge. Our unity really should be for survival. So what is C.R.O.E.'s position in helping our people understand that?
Well, sister, we try to bring information to the people, our people in particular, that is unfiltered. Information to provide a platform for those who have information, for it to be a two-way exchange. We do the stream and live shows to give an opportunity to our guests to call in and pose questions. We're on, the Munir Muhammad Show comes on now 7 days a week. At 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. We have Mohammedan Friends that comes on not only in the Chicagoland area, but in several other cities on Sundays and Mondays throughout the week. And so we produce content to stimulate thought. And this is what they have to understand as well. And starting with my father, what we try to show people is that you can love yourself in kind and still be respected by others.
Right.
All of our guests are not Black people. We have people from all walks of life on our shows. And it's from a position of strength, of mutual respect. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was international in his reach and in his scope. And so we try to do the same thing, but we want to be that image to show you that we're not fearful of being Black. We're not scared to say Black or have to whisper when it's time to say, you know, Caucasian, this or that. So we feel it's our responsibility to be that voice, not only for our people, but to strengthen those Black people in position of influence,
Right.
to not allow them to be disconnected from their community. So if you're in a position as an elected official, come on the show, talk to the people, help us to understand what you're dealing with or the processes that need to be enacted in order for change to come about. I say this all the time. You know, I have a lot of elected officials and I advocate for them on this level to say, hey, you know, you have to support them. So, you know, why not? I've been involved in things that go on in city council and other communities. The people are calling in or writing in or voicing their opinion on things they want to change. But it was something in the Black community, maybe one or two people there that are there to speak on behalf of it. And so, you know, it is a challenging thing. And I'm saying that if you believe that voting is the answer, then your vote is not something that you do every 4 years or every 2 years, depending on the election. It's a process that you have to remain engaged. Go or attend the monthly council meetings or the quarterly meetings. You know, go to your local elected official, the community organization's websites to see what's going on. Remain engaged in that process, because if you're only showing up every 4 years, then why is where's the communication to know what's going on? And so we feel that that's our responsibility. But the number one thing that we do is do it without compromising who we are in our love and belief of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's why you see his name, a picture on every show. That's why we begin and end every show with the greetings, Assalamu alaikum, so they'll know where we stand.
Right.
And so this is the beauty of it, to show them that we are here. And then we have to recount that history. Remember, no one gave us this. We used to call into the radio shows and things, but we were excluded. You know, it was easy for people to hang up on us and we couldn't get a platform. And so when you look at those humble beginnings of going down to the cable access, you know, and being self-trained, our people went down there to be trained and gave of their own time. And so to learn that, to pool our resources, to buy a facility, to create our own studio, and then the freedom associated with that, to say, all right, whenever the time is ready, we can produce and get information to our people at any given time. And so just the freedom, the confidence of that, and trying to show what we do. And so we often say that the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and C.R.O.E. is one of the few things that you'll get the return on the investment up front. And our expectation is that you do not hide the truth and you tell the people where you got it from. And so C.R.O.E. Television, our responsibility just goes back to what my father used to say. He said, it's a production with you in mind, and you being the Black nation.
Yes. You know, and I'll tell you, in all honesty, I realized that I patterned the Nurah Speaks podcast with that. You know, in the introduction of the show, you know, this is a show for the Black community, and we're going to talk about these engagements and bring folks who've demonstrated capacity in those fields. I'm very selective of my guests. I mean, people have said, "Oh, I need to come on your podcast," and I thought, "No, you're not coming on mine. You might come on someone's podcast, but not mine," because you know, people have to be, you know, I like my credibility. I like it where it is. And I don't want to sully that by bringing someone onto the show because they want to grandstand and they have no roots in the community and they have no evidence with their words. Yeah. So that's number one. And number two, to have a show that is specifically for the Black community. Someone has to love us enough to have a conversation that may be unpopular, that may not be heard in the mainstream. But as you said, we have to have someone provoking thought. And there are plenty of podcasts with brothers and sisters smoking cigars and drinking beer and sipping wine and talking about popular culture. And if that's your jam, then there's a place for you.
Yes.
But if you want to do a little bit of thinking, then come on over to Nurah Speaks. And I'm so grateful, brother, that C.R.O.E has been such a trailblazer in that way for Black conversation, intellectual conversation. And the fact that the message that a host, or excuse me, that a guest gives is unfiltered. It's not the sound bite that gets twisted and then they have to spend the next 2 months of their campaign explaining what they didn't say but was altered in the editing room. And it's unfair. And so for C.R.O.E to provide that, not just for those people who want to come on and share what it is that they want to share with the public, but that the public, our people, can call in and express their issues and get their questions answered. That is such an instrumental gift. And, often when I'm commenting on your shows, I say, thank you for this great content. I learned so much watching the program with all of the wonderful guests that you have, the informative guests that you have. And even at times when you have local electeds in Chicago or Illinois, principles are universal. So while they're talking about Chicago or Illinois, I'm thinking about Camden and New Jersey, so I'm just grateful to have brothers and sisters doing such a diligent job in that way. And I'm grateful for that, really.
Thank you, Susan. Let me add to that, to give added perspective to the viewing audience, because I know that everyone may not like every guest that comes on the show. And I know that especially with elected officials might get messages like that person's lying or this or that, or may not be true. But this is why I do what I do. I'll give and open the platform for our people to give their message. Now, the truth testifies on you one way or another. And if it's out of your mouth, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt unless otherwise I have evidence. And I do that. I won't cut you off based on my assumption, because I know, remember, we started this because we knew what it was like to be excluded.
Right.
We see, what are they doing on social media now? Facebook, everyone, they can just like that. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, just because they say it's not, could cut you off. And so for our people, some of that is understanding as well, because when you hear of a guest that may not be popular, and you listen for things, you can see what you have that you may be able to align with, or you may be able to give them a question to make them change or think differently about their perspective. And so that is the reality of it, because we can't be fearful about having dialogue with anyone. Because, and see, that's what I said, I've grown up talking with people who believed other than what I believed. And there's a such thing called healthy debate and dialogue. And we know how to be respectful, and the only thing that would be disrespectful is to disrespect the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Of course, our platform or our people in a disrespectful way, and that won't happen, but we can have intelligent conversation with those that we may not agree with and have differing opinions. And why do I say this? Because our people have to learn and understand various perspectives in order to know how to identify truth. See, we've too often, been just told what's true and which way to go. And as I say, with this whole election, sister, just think about the Democratic Party having a slogan talking about restoring the soul of America. And what is that supposed to mean to Black people here in America? And yet we bought into that. We bought into that. Restoring the soul of America is more insulting to Make America Great Again, because at least in Make America Great Again, you really identify with that. But restoring the soul of America, as if the soul of America ever had a compassionate bone in its body for you and I. There's never been a period of time when we've been treated with freedom, justice, and equality. And to imply that this would be coming in just with the change in a party leadership, when it's all the same thing.
Right.
And, it's insulting, the fact that we don't ask for anything. And let me go to the real root of this system. We're going to talk about history too. And when it comes down to Black people, we understand that it's fear. It's fear of being labeled hate. And see, Back in I believe it was 59, Mike Wallace, there was a show entitled The Hate That Hate Produced. And it was about the Muslims. And that's how many people around the country on television were introduced to the Muslims, right, saying that this is a group that hated Caucasian people. Now just think about this, the hate that hate produced. So right, you're acknowledging, yeah, we hate you, but you think we hate you because you hate me. And that's what we're talking about. And so that's what's wrong. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad never taught us to hate Caucasian people. Right. He said that they could have been anybody, but what they fit the description of what's in the book of people who've been called the devil, who created mischief, that we're in that book, as far as the people who sojourned in the land for 400 years that wasn't our own. And so it wasn't personal, it's just the facts. Right, so as they stated, and so when that show came out, and Black people in our loving nature, because we're so close to God, we don't want to hate nobody, you know, and we say that. And so you begin to label us and distance the Muslims. No, they are not inclusive. They don't love everybody. And so there you have it. That's at the root. That was at the root then, and it's at the root now. Because undoubtedly, when you have this conversation, it's going to come up even openly or in the thought process. Well, what about Caucasian people? Yeah. And so what we like to say to the people is that we know who they are, they know who we are, and we operate. Let's look at the policies around the Latino community. Whether it's immigration reform, whether it's DACA, they could have policy and interests that are spoken that's exclusive, even though immigration, it affects many people. Of course, our poor Haitian brothers and sisters who don't get any.
They don't get a break.
Or anybody else. But we know primarily this has been a Latino issue. But no one speaks of hate or what about everybody else. It doesn't even come up about the other people that it affects. And if you uttered it, you'd be seeming as you'd be diminishing the plight of the Latino community. Right. And so we can't even do anything with Black, even when you say reparations, even when you have a long list of everybody else who received reparations in some kind of form, it didn't even come up in this presidential election with all these things going on. When you could ask for anything in the world, what did you ask for? And so, but we cannot think of anything. We had a Black president that said, hey, you know, if you rise the tide, then even the bottom would come up. You know, it's never anything specifically for Black people. And now, and you'll never have it. I mean, now it's Black and brown, and I understand underserved communities, every buzzword you can have except for Black. Right. And so what I'm saying is, from the hate that hate produced has influenced our people so much that anything that's exclusively Black, we somehow condition to think that it's wrong not to be inclusive of everyone else. And it doesn't mean that they can't benefit. It means that the primary driver of the issue, what we're trying to address, is the upliftment of the Black community. And for those reasons and that fear alone is why the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's program is so instrumental, because the first thing that it does is removes fear. Right. It removes fear. And you can't have freedom, sister, if you're fearful of your enemy.
Right. Yeah, those two things can't exist at the same time. And so I'm listening to you speak. I'm sure that folks who are watching this streaming or who are listening to it on the podcast, they're not used to hearing conversations like this. To hear Black people say, well, you got to ask for something. No, not for everybody, but ask for something for you. I say, if you're not going to do something for self, you better ask for something. Right. If you're not going to do something for self, you better ask for something, and ask for something meaningful. And so that is why we're not taken seriously, you know, and because we're not doing anything for self. And, you know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in his awesome book, Message to the Black Man, and I encourage everyone who's listening to purchase that book. In that book, he said that we get nothing because we don't do anything for ourselves. So every election cycle comes and they come and they speak to the Black community and they talk about Black issues, and they'll go to the prominent Black church and they'll stand next to the prominent Black preacher in town. But at the end of it, the election cycle, the election comes and it goes, and then they come back in 2 years, or they come back in 4 years. And the people in the community say, well, they only come around when there's an election. And I'm saying this because I hear them say it, and I think we should challenge our people that, look, you don't need the electeds to come around every 2 years to speak to you. What you need to do, and what I need to, we need to come around to each other and have conversations about what we can do for self. And then when they come, we say, this is our platform, this is what we're doing, and show them that not only do we have the strength in the numbers, but we're also busy being active in the community, so that they'll see, well, wow, these people may have a power base. Maybe we should pay attention this time when we come back around to their communities. And so it's conversations like this is why the Nurah Speaks podcast exists, because I think we have to elevate. It's time to elevate this game. We have to elevate this operation. And, the folks who may be well-intended, but good intentions don't make for great outcomes. We could be well-intended with horrible innovations and hurtful innovations to ourselves. And so we have to think about doing things differently, because our outcome has continuously been the same, meaning that we lose. So we're in the, quote, social justice movement. Well, this is the civil rights movement repackaged, right? Yes, and so,
sister, when you say that, and I want to go to this because it's usually our own community that adopts the same narratives over and over again. And you hear about the importance of voting. Mm-hmm. And as I stated earlier, voting as a standalone thing that you do in November or April and March in the primaries, if you're just doing that, then you're going to fail.
Right.
You have to be engaged in the process if you choose to. And when we say, our ancestors died for the right to vote, and I will say this, and this is no disrespect to anyone. I have a grandfather that lived to be 100 years old, a grandmother that was well into her 90s, and used to tell me a lot of things. And not once did they mention the importance of voting. And sat me down to do that. Doesn't mean that it's not important. I think that the narrative of that was the sole driver behind the civil rights movement. See, when people want equality and justice, then voting was a vehicle or a tool that they were told that was the path to that.
Right.
So to put it all in on voting as opposed to the ultimate goal is a misrepresentation of that. Look at how many Black elected officials we've had in all walks of government, in all spheres of government, and still everywhere you go, with the exception of, I'll say, Benton Harbor, Michigan, with our brother minister, not brother minister, but brother Marcus Muhammad, who's the mayor of Benton Harbor, Michigan, and he has the Black police chiefs and the people in decisions there. But in most places, still we're at the bottom of the totem pole with that. And so what I'm saying is that we become irresponsible in how we're sharing this information and misleading the generations to come that just by voting it's going to be changed. Oh, that's not it. And we're doing the same thing, quite honestly, with this vaccine. Everywhere they roll out and tell people to take the vaccine, and that's people can take it if they want, but to mute the conversation of any skepticism or any studies and articles that come out highlighting things that don't go right with the vaccine. That's muted, dead air. You don't hear it.
Right.
Everything is just take it. It's safe. It's safe. It's safe. I mean, these are things when it's targeted to our community, we get these sound bites that always work towards the furthering of someone else's agenda. And it's packaged like they're doing this, like you're suffering the most, so this is why you should vote. You're suffering the most with the COVID-19, sorry, I don't know what I said wrong, but the COVID-19 pandemic. And so you need to take this. And so we just want, give me all the information to make me have an intelligent decision, or Black people, investigate yourself.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just insulting that this is a continuous cycle over and over again, that we're given information that we don't investigate, and the masses of our people are just led astray.
You know, I was on a call, a Black History program, where I had the great opportunity to present a hidden Black history figure, and I presented Sister Clara Muhammad, being a pioneer in homeschooling in America. But at the end, there was a doctor who talked about COVID-19. And one of the things, and I'll say she was probably the most fair, because she was the only doctor that came on that said, if you want to wait, then wait. And she encouraged people to do that. And I've never heard anyone do that, Black or otherwise. So I appreciated her validating all of those concerns. But one thing she did advise consumers, because that's what we are. She said, you know, read the ingredients. And I thought, now we're people that don't read the back of a cereal box. We're the people that don't read packaging, you know, and if we were to read it, would we understand what we're reading? Yes, right. So, so even with that, when they say, read the label, and I'll tell you, brother, I've trained my children to understand that when they read the label and it says natural flavoring, that doesn't mean that the flavoring was natural. That means it has a natural flavor of a peach. But that flavoring came because somebody put some chemicals together in the lab. So even when it's labeled, we still have to question what's on the label and behind the label.
Yes. And then, you know, if something has to be frozen at that temperature, and then this thing, I have to have questions. And like I said, you know, I understand the urgency, the desperation, all of those things, you know, that make someone wants to take it. And it's personal choice for many, but I still, that which we can control, is what we put in our bodies and how we try to deal with our own immune system. And like I said, to wait, because it was a rushed process. And my opinion is not, you know, whether people can do what they want. However, it is when you listen to the information that's targeted to the Black community in particular, you get one perspective. Everyone take it, it's safe, take it. And you do not hear that opposing voice or something to give you an alternative that tells you, like the doctor that you spoke, or the doctors we've had on, Dr. Terry Mason, to say, hey, you know, you can watch what you eat and how to eat to live. You can do better to help your body fight off not only this, but any disease by getting healthier, you know. And so this is the thing that I'm saying, is just want our people to begin to just look at things through the lens of truth, as opposed to just being given information and taking it hook, line, and sinker.
Right. Brother, so it is Black History Month.
Yes.
And I definitely wanted to have a conversation about Malcolm X. You know, he was a student and follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And just Saturday, there was a press conference where someone who was an informant for the NYPD and the FBI made a deathbed confession about his involvement and the federal government and the New York City Police Department's involvement in the assassination of Malcolm X. And I think that there needs to be a very broad conversation held regarding Malcolm X and why he is shoved in our faces every year. Certainly, you know, when Malcolm X was a student and follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we heard him say, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches me. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he was quoting, and we love the powerful language. He was one of hundreds of ministers that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had who taught the same teaching. Malcolm X happened to be in New York, which is a very, very big town. But I think that in the Black community, we need to revisit this and come to an understanding of how he got to be so popular and, in fact, repackaged to us. And I'll say the same way Dr. King has been repackaged, branded, and given to America. Dr. King was not someone who was welcome in the Black churches in his latter years. Dr. King was not someone who was beloved by America. ever, ever in his, during his leadership in the civil rights movement. But now we can find Dr. King on a stamp. Now, when there's civil unrest in America, we can point to everybody loving Dr. King. And so Malcolm X was someone that the world hated. And even the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that they talk badly about him and his student, Malcolm X. He said, but I would be, in other words, suspicious if they had anything good to say. But now we hear them saying great things about Malcolm X, everyone. And it's very unusual for someone who spoke so vehemently against injustice while he was a student and follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And now he's packaged to us. Not that what he said when he was a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wasn't true, but as I said, we give so much credit to the students when they were taught by someone. So we want the author. So I do want to have a conversation about Malcolm X, and it could be multi-tiered, I'm sure. And I would like to hear what you have to say.
Sister, first of all, I'm smiling because I really appreciate this question and this topic. And Malcolm X was repackaged and constantly repackaged, in my opinion, to try to bring, to tarnish the legacy of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. And the deathbed confession of the former NYPD officer, I'm sure that's good for those who follow or care about Malcolm X. But as a student of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm, he died as a hypocrite amongst us. And the Holy Quran teaches us not to offer prayer nor stand by the grave of a hypocrite. For those of you who don't believe as we do, I understand, so allow me to historically paint this picture for you to give it context. As you know, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had many students, and he said that he hadn't taught a minister like Malcolm. He taught Malcolm like no other, but Malcolm rose to be the national spokesman of the Nation of Islam. And so he was out there speaking, but it didn't mean that he was a decision maker and any control, anything like that.
Brother, can I pause? He rose to be the national minister.
Right, in New York.
But he was given that title by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's not something that he necessarily graduated or qualified for. Correct. It was something that was assigned to him.
Yes, it was assigned to him. And in that role, and like we say, you have press secretaries for the president and all types of, but the president is still the decision maker. And so Malcolm had been out there. And so as with anything, you Caucasian people in particular, they study your weaknesses, brothers and sisters. They understand the things that you're vulnerable to and how to manipulate those things and take advantage of them. As we know, the most infamous thing is that the chickens coming home to roost statement by Malcolm X, when the messenger had instructed all of his ministers, do not speak on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It was not that we had such a love and affinity for John F. Kennedy as a president or individual, but many of our Black people did. Many of our people did. We still had things and fights going on in the court system for the rights of our prisoners to practice not only their religious beliefs, but their dietary restrictions in prisons. And so it was not the time to bring negative attention. And it's just the respectful thing to do, quite honestly. It's a civilized thing to do.
Right.
And so Malcolm X deviated from that order, and he spoke about the assassination of President Kennedy. Now, Malcolm was suspended for a period of time when he disobeyed that direct order. Now, sister, you and I know that suspension from the Nation of Islam, when you deviate, that goes for everybody.
All of us.
I mean, right. And so I know Muhammad Ali was suspended. You had Wallace Muhammad suspended several times. There were other members that were suspended when you didn't follow the guidelines. You served your suspension, you did what you did, and you worked your way back in.
Right.
Unfortunately, Malcolm X did not do that. And I will say this, and no disrespect to his family, but I don't know whether, he died as Malcolm Little or what the legal context of his name was, because he was no longer a member of the Nation of Islam. I know there's some call him El Hajj Malik Shabazz, so whatever title you get, you can use it. I'm just going to say Malcolm for the context of this dialogue. And so during that time, that is when, only when he was suspended, did he start the slander, what I call, of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Speaking of the domestic life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the most unceremonious ways, openly criticizing him with things, not only in addition to the domestic life, but this was the thing that the people lay their hat on. He said that he went to Mecca during this time, and he discovered, as he went to Mecca, Muslims, these were Arabs and people who weren't Black all together, making the Hajj and in peace. And so therefore, the doctrine of the Nation of Islam and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was false, because, this proves, because there are white Muslims and people together, so this is false. And so it's an immoral man who's teaching a false teaching. And so this spirit of acceptance, remember, just like we said before, remember that fear and the goal of assimilation versus separation. We talked about that earlier. So this narrative, of course, fits right in. You go straight to the Caucasian people, hold press conferences. This is your niche now. And so those of us who know, we know that when Malcolm was suspended and went over there, that he had already been to the United Arab Republic and Saudi Arabia in 1959. He had already traveled over there. So he knew that there were Arab Muslims. He was in New York. So the United Nations, the headquarters of the United Nations is in New York. And those of you with history, the building that was erected in New York was in 1952. So he knew he was there. Okay.
So the fact that there were Caucasian Muslims was not news to him, like he was suggesting that it was new.
Exactly. And as you know, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad traveled internationally and was received throughout the Middle East. And so this narrative was not true. And so then, it was his slander and disrespect, calling the teachings of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Master Farad Muhammad false. And that is a slander. For those of you who are not Muslims, to believe and then disbelieve, that is what we call a hypocrite. And so for Malcolm to be the national spokesman for the Nation of Islam, to be a minister, all of this truth that he's expounded, all of this studying that he knew. And so by taking a trip to Mecca, then you come back and claim that it's all false, that this is not the way, that this is an immoral man, only after you've been suspended.
Right.
And I want you to know, in the viewing audience, does that sound like a righteous man, or does that sound like a Negro? Does it sound like your friends, when they have been terminated from the job, and then they don't say, it's like, oh man, I didn't do anything. They don't say the 15 times they've been late, or the inadequate work that they turned in, the countless warnings of what. And so therefore, that's the way we looked at this. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave a direct order to his fans, let Malcolm be who he is. Don't touch Malcolm. That was no big deal. Malcolm's deviation, of course, with Muslim followers of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or anyone, you don't want anyone talking and slandering your messenger, but the deviation, we're spiritual people. And the book tells us that, that hypocrites will be led step by step to destruction. And so the God, as we're taught, we're righteous people. the God doesn't necessarily take you away. He watches your downfall systematically and lets it play out for those as an example. And so when you look at Malcolm X and that whole thing, brothers and sisters, of the timing and what he laid his hat on. Now you may say, okay, well, maybe he left because of the domestic life. Then what is the domestic life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad? You saw Minister Ishmael Muhammad, who is a son of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, on my show yesterday. You've seen the children of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad always represent and defend him. Right. If there was something illegal going on with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, do you not think J. Edgar Hoover and the people in the FBI government would not have seized that opportunity to arrest him? Right. Remember, they jailed the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad for not going to the draft. And he was actually, at the time, I believe he was over the age limit. He might have been 41 or 42. Yes, so they could have done something with that if that was an issue. And so I say that for you out there who want to hold on to this. And so we continue. The brothers and sisters out there gravitated towards Malcolm X when his language changed. He put down the spiritual base, as he told people, and he made a speech that put him on a map called the ballot and the bullet. Right. The bullet. And so therefore, he said, okay, it's either with the ballot or the bullet. Okay. Now, when you speak things, and we're taught this, either Muslims are taught not to carry so much as a penknife, we defend ourselves and we rely on the divine protection of Allah. And so we have to adhere to that. It doesn't mean that we think we can walk through bullets or this and that, but we have to rely on the clear thinking, because the messenger said, if you talk about guns and thinking about guns, your mind is going to be on the gun instead of the power of Allah. That's right. And so we understand that. Malcolm, in his later days said he was surrounded by Negro actors and politicians. And so he chose his path and he spoke it into existence. We know that you actually speak things into existence. True. And so his slander and the disparaging way that he talked about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is what makes him a hypocrite. Therefore, as a Muslim follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I can only go by his words. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you all could check these facts, as you said that Malcolm was such a great recruiter. The membership of the Nation of Islam, it grew even more after Malcolm's departure. When you look at the strength and what we did not miss a beat. It was those of you out there in the streets. And when you call Black consciousness, then where are Malcolm's disciples? What was his organization? When you talk about the Black Panther Party and the brothers Kwame Ture, Fred Hampton, they don't, no one talks about Malcolm as a member of that or the person who inspired them. Kwame Ture sought counsel with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Right. And so Malcolm lived a relatively short period of time outside of the Nation of Islam. And so therefore, when he left this earth, he left as a hypocrite. And so they packaged Malcolm to make you think or to stir up the emotion that somehow the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was jealous of him. Somehow the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not the man, it was really Malcolm. So you follow the man Malcolm who told you to get the ballot and a bullet and live for only a year outside of the Nation of Islam. Right. Everything that made you love Malcolm was when he was representing the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He did nothing of himself. He produced nothing on his own. The house that you say that he firebombed was not his home. It was the home of the Nation of Islam. And you tell me, brothers and sisters, and I'm not going to call, I know it's not quite a selfie, but if I'm looking out the window posing with a machine gun and say, hey, man, take this picture, who you shooting? Who you shooting at? You don't want that. And if it's your man, he's not going to take a picture of it. You got a machine gun and they looking at, well, what you going to do with it? You making those kinds of speeches. And I'm sorry, sister, I know I'm going to a street like Love, you know how to get it. I'm gonna roll it back. But what I'm saying is that our people get disillusioned with the embodiment of this tough persona. No, Malcolm started speaking on the ballot and the bullet and left from under the divine protection of Allah. And he was chastised. I mean, he unfolded. Look at the pictures of Malcolm X while he was a member of the Nation of Islam and when he was not. The raggedy, scraggly beard. I know y'all wearing them now like it looks good, but just as ridiculous as it looked on him is how it looks on some of you now when it's not, when it's unkept. And so what I'm saying is that he looked like he lost his discipline, which he did. He adhered and he surrounded himself with things that he was just speaking against mere months before. And some people may say, well, he was trying to get back in the Nation of Islam. He was apologizing and writing letters. And there are people who didn't get it to the messenger. Well, you know what? He should have held a press conference and did the things like he did before. When he was talking all that talk and slandering the messenger, he found a microphone and a way to do it. If he wanted to get back, he should have did it with the same vigor, the same passion, and did it the same way. But no, Malcolm, he overestimated his value. He was vulnerable, his feelings was hurt, and he thought that he was the one making it happen. And when he got out there and understood that this was a divine thing, and sister, I want to say this, that's why people who have taken the bits and pieces of the Messages program has not been successful.
Right.
What he did has not been duplicated.
Right.
And so you have to understand that Master Farad Muhammad, the great Mahdi, as we're coming up on the birth anniversary, February 26th, and our observance of Savior's Day, he is the key to this. Right. And when you slander the messenger, you slander Almighty God Allah. And so what Malcolm did in that base is a betrayal. And so therefore, how he left the planet from an emotional standpoint, you never want to see a Black man die, especially in a violent way. You empathize for family members and loved ones, but from a righteous perspective, it is the chastisement that we, not going to say that we knew what happened in that way, but the book tells us that it would be destruction. There are consequences to your actions. And so as a Muslim follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and one who believes wholeheartedly, I would never want to be caught on the side of evoking sympathy or compassion for someone who did not show any empathy or compassion for God and his messenger. And so therefore, when the very basis of the reasoning that Malcolm X gave for his departure from the Nation of Islam was based on falsehood. Because even though he went openly, said it openly to the government, we know that he went to the authorities talking about the domestic life. And also we have to give some of that to his son, Warith Muhammad, and that's another show for that. But as you all know, if there was something there, the FBI and legal authorities would not have hesitated in coming to get the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes.
And for that theory that he somehow went to Mecca and found out that there were Black Muslims when he had already been there in 1959, he was in New York, the headquarters of the United Nations. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had traveled internationally. We have been teaching about Orthodox Muslims from the get-go, and he was a national spokesman, and so he wouldn't know that.
Right.
And for those of you, and so who don't know, I'm just asking you to just look at that part and investigate those pieces. Now, you can like who you want, because quite frankly, you don't get to choose your heroes. I know white people choose your heroes. And so therefore, you can label them, you can put them on a stamp, you can do what you want with them. However, when we look at the truth, and what I said earlier, sister, when we measure the results, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was and is the messenger of Allah and the greatest Black man to ever walk the planet Earth, besides God, person himself.
Thank you, brother, for that history. And, to those who's listening, I wanted the brother to come on and share that history, because C.R.O.E. is the archives of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So what you want to know about the history of the Nation of Islam, you can visit C.R.O.E. You can go to their website, learn more about them. And it's politicians, it's psychologists, it's sociologists, it's Hollywood writers and producers who visit CROE, who get information from CROE when they're interested in the history of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Black people in general. So what Brother has given us is a historical perspective, not an emotional perspective, not a personal perspective, but a historical perspective. And, facts cannot be refuted because they're true. And so I think that what the brother laid out for us in the, frankly, deception that Malcolm X used in suggesting that all of a sudden he realized there were white Caucasian Muslims around the world. So what Elijah Muhammad taught was false. That's unfair. And as he said, someone who loses a job and now they come back and they're not talking about their infractions, but they want to talk about the boss and they want to talk about the manager and they want to talk about their colleague. Well, he did it too. Well, she did it too. Well, he came in late. We've all seen that. And the kind of betrayal that occurred, we wouldn't stand for that if that was a family member. We would ostracize that person. That person would be an outcast. And as we say now, Malcolm X is packaged to us as a hero, and he may be a hero to you. And if he's a hero to you, celebrate your guy. But we're here to share the truth, and we want you to understand the truth.
Can I add just context to that real quick, just your perspective on why we love Muhammad Ali? Malcolm X's suspension was only for 90 days, sister. It was not like a year to you, but 90 days, 3 months. Mm-hmm. He could have left the country, came back, and it was over with. Right. So if that was it. Comparatively speaking, Muhammad Ali, who we know was suspended, and of course they did repackage Muhammad Ali, but it was only after he lost his faculties and really couldn't speak for himself. Right. But what I'm saying is that I wanted to make sure I put that out there for 90 days for those who may not know and think that the suspension was indefinite or 5 years, something like that. It was a 90-day suspension based on speaking out of context, disobeying a direct order that could impact negatively followers of the Nation of Islam who are currently incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And that shows the lack of discipline, in my opinion, the pride that he used to guide him in his actions. And it charted a course that resulted in his untimely demise.
Thank you for that context. And, what I want to add as well is we like caricatures. So the caricature of the Black revolutionary in the leather jacket, the beret with the shotgun, with the machine gun, that appeals to us aesthetically. And we think of that as revolution, right? Now, what we know is that we can't fight a revolution with somebody else's weapons, right? If we fight a revolution with someone else's weapons, we run out of bullets, what are we going to do? When we get wounded in the war, whose hospitals are we going to go to? So fighting with arms, with weapons, that's not the a way that the revolution should happen or will happen for Black people. It has to happen in our thinking. But when we see that picture of Malcolm X with a gun, that appeals to the ego, that appeals to the passion, that appeals to us, and it excites us. But a gun does not produce freedom, justice, and equality for us. And I think it's the imagery, brother, because we are a people that are like children and we're vulnerable to imagery. That's why it's so hard to get us to think and to have conversations that are intellectual. We'd rather listen to Wendy Williams or any other kind of show that is Real Housewives, that's kind of scandalous and that is low-hanging fruit. But to reach up into the heavens and to really think and to have a serious dialogue, we're just frankly not accustomed to that. We our tolerance is very, very low. I got to think. I have to use my brain. And I'm saying this, we know our people. This is a podcast for Black folks. So we got to talk to our people. But when we see the imagery of a Black man or a Black woman with an afro and a leather jacket, that appeals to us. When we see a Black man like Malcolm X had that picture with him at a gun, with a gun at his window, that appeals to us, right? But what does that activity of using arms, what does that produce? And so the Nation of Islam was a very disciplined and is a very disciplined organization that requires accountability for us, something else that we are not good with. So instead of our people flocking to the results that was produced by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, those of us who lacked character, who lacked discipline, or just didn't want to give up dope, didn't want to give up cigarettes and weed and alcohol. You know, we want to be a revolutionary on a corner with a blunt. We want to be the revolutionary on a corner or at the bar talking about what Black folks should do. But the ones who are using their intellectual capacity and fortitude, we don't give them the same kind of play or respect. And I think that's why Malcolm X and that imagery of him as a revolutionary with a gun that is given to us so that can tap into something just aesthetically, because it doesn't produce what we need and what we're talking about we need in 2021.
It also lends to the statement, by any means necessary. That's become a cliche. And we know that it's not by any means necessary. There is a program.
There is a means.
And you don't do anything of success by any means necessary. You have to be strategic. And strategic requires thought. And so by any means necessary with a gun, it is undisciplined. It creates that kind of thing of disorderly conduct. And when I say disorderly conduct, I'm not talking about for Caucasian people's system. I mean, for what we need to do in the way of righteousness. And so it's convenient because it doesn't require anything. And earlier I said we choose convenience over truth. And so everything with Malcolm X, as far as their repackaging, it's supposed to be the anti of Dr. King and turning the other cheek. This is the group that's like, hey, whatever, I'm about that life. You know, I can match him man for man, but you can't.
Right.
The United States, let me tell you, the one thing that the United States does here in America is export weapons. They have weapons. You're not going to have more weapons than the United States, period. I don't care how many guns you get. And if you have guns, they still have the bullets. And so therefore, you know, we don't control them. So no matter what, you're not in that position. And so what I'm saying, and that's why it hurt me, even when I saw the civil unrest and the things going on, our sisters out there throwing rocks at the police and, you know, and all of that, you don't want your women in harm's way. And that's not strategic. And I go back, sister, when we look at our context and how we always break down when you talk about the boycotts back in the day. We could have pooled our resources and had our own buses. No. But what we did, we went back and started using theirs, you know. And so what I'm saying is that we never go all the way to do for self. We go far enough for Caucasian people to say, okay, well, what about this? And we're like, okay. And that's what I said. The ultimate goal for some is assimilation, but the ultimate goal for freedom has to be separation.
Yes, sir. You know, and so with that press conference that they just had Saturday with attorney Benjamin Crump, with 3 daughters of Malcolm X and the nephew of the NYPD police officer, the FBI informant, you know, one thing that Ben Crump repeated several times was restorative justice. That there needs to be restorative justice because there are people whose lives have been destroyed by the FBI and the NYPD because of the falsehood and the claims. And they had people who were working and they blamed other people and just destroyed their lives. And I don't recall hearing him say anything about the Nation of Islam. One of the things that people often say is, didn't y'all kill Malcolm? Well, of course we didn't. And we've been telling you that we had nothing to do with that. You blamed it on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you want to talk about restorative justice. Now, will you come back and take a look? Now that they've told you, now that the state actor told you, the state actor meaning the man who made the deathbed confession, now that the state actor has told you the Nation of Islam had nothing to do with it, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had nothing to do with it, will you come back and take another look? Because if we're going to talk about restorative justice and they're talking about Tupac Shakur's mom and other organizations, what about all of the slander, all of the lies that they told to use Malcolm X and his death to separate our people from the teachings and the program of the Nation of Islam that's beneficial for our people? So they wanted us all of these years to be apologetic and to speak softly because our people thought that we were responsible for Malcolm's death. And we didn't had nothing to apologize for. We had nothing to speak softly about. And so now I want to see some vindication, all the people that in our families, our friends, in our circles, are you going to come back and say, oh, I'm sorry. I realize they're not going to come back and do that. I know. And that, because that could be much for our people, but the thought needs to be put out there. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because the restorative justice that needs to be done to the character assassination that they did to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam and its members, that was devastating, because that put a rift in our people where we have something that C.R.O.E. shares, that Nurah Speaks Podcast shares, that Muhammad Speaks Radio Show shares, that's instrumental, that our people, by and large, have ignored, because their government and their media pundits have told them that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam were responsible for the death of this beloved man, when we know he was not beloved by these media pundits, by the government of America, when in fact we now know that the government were the ones that assassinated him. We knew this all along, but maybe now they can be convinced.
Sister, and you're right on a global perspective with our people, and I hope they do. I really do. But I think of the people that if this document, because there have been other documents before, it may not have been a press conference, and for those who investigated, but justice for the Nation of Islam, restorative justice, it just doesn't fit into the equation of the Caucasian people. And I'll say this, that even with this coming out, I think that in this political climate of, okay, it's convenient to show empathy towards the Black community, here it is. And I think that they're doing this just like I said it in a different way back in the day. People pressed me a little too much, said, okay, if it did happen, now what? What you gonna do?
Right.
What now? Who killed Dr. King? Who killed Fred Hampton? What you do about that? What?
Right.
Now, they may not like that, but if sometimes you don't want to focus on the truth, then all right, well, what's all this talking about then? So what I'm saying is that they give us this, and the people who will get credit for it are the other. Now, because Caucasian people often remember, the FBI as an entity can be rebranded. That's J. Edgar Hoover. Anytime you hear J. Edgar Hoover's name, you already know that it's deception. So this doesn't cost or restore anything. Of course, the families and the people who are in jail, the slander, when you look at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who we didn't even get to touch on that, because Malcolm really, with the nation, when it first happened, that was died down and squandered. I mean, it was just squelched after a while. But when you looked at, with Jesse Jackson's presidential runs of 84 and 88, and you had the Minister Farrakhan getting momentum. Then you had the movie come out in 90, 91 or whatever about Malcolm X to throw that out there to slow that momentum, because that's what it was for. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had him killed. It was always Mr. Farrakhan's role in the Nation of Islam doing that. And so it's always been designed every 20 years or so, something to come back up to resurrect this. And what does it say about us? We ain't produced any more leaders, so you keep going to this one. And so what I'm saying is that I've seen my brothers and sisters of the Nation of Islam share the letters, the post about this, and asking our people to say what, and I see the little likes on Facebook, but is an apology in order? Would the FBI or this new administration come out and say, want to apologize to the Nation of Islam and its membership for the role that we played in that, that would be restorative justice to a degree, or at least a gesture on the grand scale. But
Right.
that won't happen. And until that happens, I don't think many of our people will say, I don't think they're going to be um, Black nationalists or people in the movement making outreach to Minister Farrakhan and members of the Nation
Mm-hmm.
of Islam saying that I was wrong, I was mistaken. In fact, um, I think it'll be like, okay, well, it's good to know, and then they keep it moving.
Yeah.
I've never seen the Nation of Islam or its followers treated fairly when it comes to falsehoods being relieved,
Mm.
being revealed, and the truth comes out. Everything that we've been teaching in the way of truth, whether it's How to Eat to Live, whether it's The Fall of America, uh, whether it's Our Savior Has Arrived, all the books, the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, truth is being revealed before us right now. And
Yeah.
they still don't give credit to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, nor his students for that truth. And I don't think this is going to be any different. I would be flattered and appreciative if it did happen. I would certainly give a platform to any law enforcement, political person who would like to come on the show and give that gesture,
Yes,
you know,
sir.
um, or just any of our people that
Yeah.
want to have that dialogue, because understand this, and I know that certain things could come out harsh, but I love our people. We were taught to love our people. But we know that the establishment of truth and justice, it doesn't always feel good all
Right.
the time, but we have to find a way to prioritize truth,
Mm.
because truth is really what puts us on the path to freedom.
Yes, sir. And prioritize our needs as well. So, brother, I've really enjoyed this conversation. We certainly went longer than I anticipated, but it's hard to be brief when we have so much to share. And I'm grateful to you coming on, and listeners who or viewers. I encourage you to visit CROE.org, CROE.org, and learn more about the organization. Visit CROTV.CRO.org, so that you can be attuned to the programming that they have. And brother, I want you to talk about Founders Day that's coming up.
Yes, ma'am. So Founders Day, unfortunately, because of the current situation with the pandemic, we are not going to have it as our signature event where people are gathering. It's just not viable for that. So what we will be doing is still making outreach and doing it's our annual fundraising campaign. And so you'll see more promotional material on that, on how to donate to CROE and Founders Day. And we'll be sending out our letters of donation, resulting in, of course, bars for your donation, depending on the tier levels with companies and things like that. Of course, your logo, your branding opportunities for the television program. But this is the one fundraising event that we have yearly.
Yeah.
We have to prioritize safety, so we won't have it in person, but we will be making the outreach, and you will see a series of shows dedicated to the organization and what we do. As you've noticed, Sister, in February, we've been highlighting more members of the Nation of Islam with their own businesses and entrepreneurs, highlighting their services to show what we're doing in the community. And so we're going to continue with that venue, except this, you'll see probably more CROE members and more historical shows in context of reminding the people of the importance and significance of CROE and why they should support us for our annual Founders Day fundraising. We're going to call it a fundraising campaign this year, since it's not a big treatment.
And I look forward to that. And brother, I will definitely share that. And in the show notes, we'll make sure that we include links to CROE, CROE TV, and also the social media platforms, CROE TV on Facebook, Munir Muhammad on Facebook, CROE 1987, I believe, on Instagram.
And what we're going to do too, and I will tell people that CROE TV on Facebook will be our signature platform. Of course, I have my Jamil Muhammad on Facebook, but we will be retiring Brother Munir Muhammad's page. It will be there for historical context, but right now we still have it active. But out of respect, we won't have it active as if we, still posting from it. That will be retired soon, and we're going to steer our viewers over to the CROE TV page, or we'll establish the Jamil Muhammad page, what we have to do. So we want to maintain that, but out of respect, we're going to retire it and, don't have it like it's an active account. We don't want the people out there being spooky.
It doesn't take much, brother. Brother, I really kind of feel like we just, got to the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's so much more that I would like to talk to you about. I really want to talk to you about your father. I would like to do a Father's Day episode, so that we can celebrate Black fathers and Black men and the impact that they make. I strive on Nurah Speaks to share with my listeners who are women, the importance of fathers and the importance of Black men, because society has certainly devalued Black men and in some ways shown us that they are invaluable, or excuse me, not valuable, or they have no value. And our children don't feel that way. Our daughters and our sons don't feel that way, So I would like to, have you back and to talk about your father, reflecting on him and then reflecting on your life as a father and how that rearing and upbringing has impacted you.
So I'd be honored to, because there's not a day that goes by where I don't think of him. I'm not reminded of him, and not only me, but I think the entire C.R.O.E family. And I could talk, for 1,000 years, and I still couldn't say how much he's meant, because all the teachable moments and things that he invested, and not only me, but those who he came in contact with. So I would be honored to do that with you.
Oh, I'd be so happy. And, brother, I'm someone as well that has Brother Munir very close to my heart. And, he was someone very early on in our journey in Camden, New Jersey, that was a very strong supporter of mine personally, and showed me the potentials that I didn't realize were there. And I know he's done that with so many other people. And he's such an impactful brother, and I'm grateful. I've had previous C.R.O.E members on the show. I've had Sister Akila Ali, Brother Yosef on the show, and I have an episode with Brother Munir Muhammad that will be airing very soon as well. And he's just, to see someone have such a significant impact on so many people, I think that he is due that honor and that celebration. And as a co-founder, one of the founding members of this wonderful, illustrious organization. And to the listeners who may be unfamiliar with C.R.O.E, you've heard everything that the brother said. You have not heard this history anywhere else. You're not going to get this on MSNBC. You're not going to get this on CBS or CNN. They don't have it to give. And if they had it, they wouldn't share it with us. So I would encourage you to support Black media. We're talking about this is a time we're talking about Black economics and how much we love being Black. Well, loving Black looks like something, and that looks like supporting Black media. And this is an independent media source, unfiltered, unbiased, and unbought. It is not corporate media, and it definitely deserves our support. So, brother, you have my support for Founders Day, and I look forward to sharing the post and the material so that Nurah Speaks audience and listeners can be more familiar with the organization.
Thank you so much, sister. I appreciate it.
Certainly. So where can listeners or viewers see the next television show?
Well, sister, of course, we will, if you're in Chicago, of course, it's on Channel 25, 7 days a week. Channel 25 at 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. if you're in the suburbs of Chicago, Monday, 7 days a week at 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. That is the Munir Muhammad Show. Comes on in the city of Chicago. If you're in the south suburbs, we have our other signature show, Muhammad and Friends, that comes on Channel 19 on Mondays and Sundays at 7 p.m. And so you can always catch us on C.R.O.E TV on our YouTube page. We post, especially our streaming live shows. We stream live every Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Central Time. You can catch us on YouTube on C.R.O.E TV, or on C.R.O.E TV on Facebook, or on my page, Jamil Muhammad, on Facebook. We also on Sundays at 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon Central Time on those same platforms. And those are live call-in shows where you can participate in the conversation.
Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate this time for you. I can't believe how much time has passed, but it's so easy for time to pass when we're having great conversations. I value you and the members of CROE so much, and please give the members my love.
Oh, and do the same for the brothers and sisters there at Camden Muhammad's Temple number 20.
I thank you, brother, so much. Thank you for being a very valued guest. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, sister.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nurah Speaks Podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, nurahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@nurahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nurah Speaks Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nurah Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.